Right, my lovely little chipolates, it is time to talk about the elephant in the room. DPS, builds, workings, utility with DPS. Now, DPS builds are probably the most numerous builds that you can find going around, especially if you are into your PvE. Kind of pointless running a healer or a tank, unless you're so inclined or you've lost a bet or something, but typically you will go with some form of DPS build. However, a lot of builders, from what I've noticed, don't really know what it is that they're building. They just go big, high, pretty numbers, ta-da, job done. There is potentially a lot more that goes into it, such as utility, how the DPS works. Is DPS actually something you want to go for, or TTK? TTK is time to kill, and DPS and time to kill are not mutually exclusive. There can be variations between them, such as the gold standard for DPS is considered to be the classic M1A, which is, don't get me wrong, a very good rifle. However, what most people would run will be something along the lines of classic M1A, Coyote's Mask, the Gift, the Backpack, Sacrifice for the Chest, Providence Defense, Holster, so that's our three-piece Providence Defense with Chest, Backpack and Holster, Grupo Gloves and Fox's Prayer Knees. Crit chance, crit damage everywhere, perfect vigilance, perfect sacrifice, very, very high DPS. We are rocking about 60% crit chance with about 200% critical hit damage. This gives us a rough DPS index per magazine of around 20 million damage, and our time to kill is 4.3 seconds, which is very good. I'm not going to start build bashing. It's pretty much the staple of DPS builds that you will see out there. Might not want to run Perfect Glass Cannon. If you don't want, Obliterate would potentially work fine. If not, run Unbreakable for a bit of survivability. You do enough damage anyway. Having a little bit of utility in there, Unbreakable, potentially could serve you quite well. However, with those numbers that I just said, about 20 million per magazine and a 4.3 second time to kill, a named elite on heroic, solo by the way, no one can really tell me why this build with the lightweight M4 using 3-piece Overlord, so we've got Fox's Prayer, Overlord Holster, Overlord Gloves, 2-piece Walker Harris and Coyote's Mask at 56% crit chance, and I think it's about a 200% crit damage as well, can't quite remember, but this has like 32 million damage per magazine, has a higher DPS climb, so will actually out DPS the M1A, and has a time to kill of a named elite on heroic of 3.8 seconds. So it does more damage over time, it has more DPS, and it kills things quicker. But when you talk to a lot of people about DPS, they just go M1A. M1A is all there is. That's all they care about. M1A. Which is kind of annoying. Now, the point of this video isn't to call people out or say everyone is wrong. It's to sort of get people thinking, because there is sort of this blanket blueprint which everyone uses, which is 3-piece Providence. Upon testing various different gear sets, I found out that it allows you to utilize so many other weapons that will outperform the typical meta. Yes, it requires maybe a little bit more effort, such as the lightweight M4. Does more damage, lower time to kill, so it's objectively better than the M1A. The problem is it's not that stable, and it's also not as accurate. As we all know, missed shots do not count towards DPS. So the build I placed up with the 3-piece Overlord allows you to compensate with the accuracy and stability side, because it has 10% rifle damage, 20% accuracy, and then 10% weapon handling. This really helps the weapon out and basically allows us to do a fair chunk more damage than the M1A ever allows us to, and we're using completely different builds. a build that should be objectively worse, but because the lightweight M4 is that much objectively better, it works out better in the long run. Still, there is one way to make sure that the M1A does keep its crown, and that is utilising pristine example. So we still have the classic M1A. We've put the 8x scope on just so that we can use pristine example for perfect focus, and all we do is we swap out Coyote's mask for a Providence piece, so we're keeping our 3 Providence pieces going. And this is objectively, if you don't mind using the 8x scope, potentially the highest DPS in the game, and puts our TTK for reds at basically a 1 shot, for purples like 1 or 2 shots, and for elites and named elites you're looking at like 4 shots if that. So objectively, depending on the build and how you want to work it, different weapons work better in different scenarios, which is kind of the point of this video. Rather than just sort of going blanket DPS, this is how DPS works, you will be surprised at how just mixing things up just a tiny little bit can get you objectively better stats. Such as, did you know one of the lowest time to kill weapons in the game is the AKM? Like, in terms of its time to kill, it is something like 64% better than the FAMAS, provided you hit headshots. Problem is, the weapon is about as stable as I am mentally. So, we now need to find a way to work around that weapon's stability / accuracy to get a decent build for it. I've already done a decent build for it, it's on my 3-piece Fenris video. However, another build that we can do that works absolutely wonders against chungas, doggos, and in raids as well as a sort of standard raid DPS is, so with the high multipliers that come with the ACRE, adding in Hollowman, Foxes and Contractors, we are pretty much geared towards dealing significant damage to chungas, doggos, or any enemy that comes our way. We are slightly lacking on the DPS, but that's where having an experienced team running Coyotes and everything else comes into play. And obviously, if you are new to raids, ignore the Regulus or the fact that I'm running a Hollow Man. Maybe just run Gruppo or another piece of Gruppo or something, bit of armor potentially, as that is a little bit more of a grind to get to. For what I would say baby's first raid build, you're possibly looking more towards something a bit more linear. Again, going with the boring standard 3-piece Providence, Gruppo mask, Fox's Prayer, Contractor's gloves, and we are using a FAMAS with Killer on it. Now for the backpack we are running Vigilance, and for the chest we're running Unbreakable. This just means you don't have to worry too much about potentially staying alive. It gives you that extra chance, you can make mistakes. And it also means that, particularly if you are sort of learning or new to the raid, you have a little bit of utility so that the rest of your teammates don't have to worry too much about you. So there are some definite options going on here. Now overall, DPS is actually pretty much the way to go, and everyone has their own sort of standard of what they like to run and how they like to run it. For me personally, and what you can see in this video that I am playing, like the background footage, what I typically run as my standard go-to DPS is Shield Splinterer, an M1A CQB, a Regulus, a Providence Defense Mask, crit chance, crit damage, and then more crit damage. The Gift, the Sacrifice, again with crit chance, crit damage, Fox's Prayer, some Gruppo gloves, and then Dodge City Holster. Dodge City Holster is my lifeline. This exotic offers so much utility, it is unreal, along with the Regulus as well. To engage in a fight, provided I don't completely potato aim, I can sneak up on the first enemy, pop that headshot and basically wipe out a very large group, or if not, absolutely definitely make sure that that one guy is not getting back up again, regardless of whatever mutation he may have. Overall, the DPS is absolutely fine. I can hit up to about 1.1 million on a headshot. You'll probably see higher on this because I do have the reanimated event going, which means we get a rather lovely multiplier to headshot damage on this event. But typically on a headshot I do about 1.1 mil with the AR. With the M1A CQB, which I tend to sort of use as a more boss burn against chungers, it's quite simple to do, really. I can either just burn them down with my AR, or if I want to instantly crack them, I can just swap to my Regulus with a few Dod City stacks, pop them in the chest, and then just go nuts from there, because the Dod City with Regulus will basically instantly crack them. So I can clear waves. If I'm being rushed up on and don't have enough time to reload, I can just swap to my pistol and basically one-shot them. Like, just Dod City holster in itself, and I would implore so many people to start using this in their builds, because we can just say goodnight to things like that. Our life now is just that much easier. We have one less named elite running around being a dickhead. Or just if there was a group there, it would have killed all of them. Or if he decided to rush me, I could have done that as well. I didn't have to go for the headshot. It would have killed him no matter where I hit, because of the way Dod City works and the stupidity that is Regulus. So I would implore most people to run Dod City, just because of the amount of utility it has. It's a lifeline, it's a lifesaver. It just offers so much damage, and it is an absolutely brilliant piece to run in most builds, really. If you're planning on doing some form of damage, Dod City is kind of a very safe bet and a good way to go. Now, this is a more streamlined variant. We're basically swapping out the mask and the holster for Providence Defense with a different exotic. So we've gone from using Dod City to Providence Defense, and the Providence Defense mask to using Coyotes. This shot for shot on our AR or our M1A will do more damage. However, you are then completely reliant on your AR or your M1A. You can still use Regulus if you have it for doing some fantastic booms, but you don't have that same impact, shall we say, but when using a pistol or in those oh crap moments. Now, because I'm a complete potato, I've actually set this one up wrong. This is the custom P416G3, and we're running Technician with this one because we're meant to be making use of Spotter, but like I said, I'm a potato. So we would actually be running Spotter on the chest. We're also using the Night Watcher mask for the 100% haste cooldown, for potentially using Scanner Pulse with our team. If not, we can run the Technician laser on the long barrel of the weapon, which is why we've gone for the P416, simply because it has a long barrel, and surprisingly not a lot of ARs actually have the long barrel for us to put that laser on. Overall, this build actually works pretty damn well, and I'm expecting builds similar to what I just posted, but you know, actually having Spotter on them and me not being a Mongo, sort of becoming the new sort of standard meta. Right now, Perfect Last Cannon is sort of the way to go, but obviously we take more damage. Other than that, our options for a damage base really is Obliterate. However, if we're able to utilise Spotter, but be able to use Gunner as well for the ammo regen and then the 10% armor on kill, I would feel that would be a lot better option than particularly running just, you know, Gunner with Perfect Glass Cannon, or the likes of. So pretty much that is one way to go, as well as if you are used to running around with directives, particularly with Fog of War, having someone that can Scanner Pulse a large area is actually pretty damn handy, especially if you've got someone that can overcharge, because an overcharge Scanner Pulse does allows the team to do even more damage. This is potentially Foresight utility. Oh my god, this could be amazing. Now, one of my favourite DPS builds to run, particularly in a group on Legendary, is this. This just does so much damage to armour as well as damage to health. Adding in all the multipliers, we've got like over 50% damage to Chungers. It's absolutely ridiculous. You're quite useless against most other things, especially the boss, but if you just sort of go in going, don't worry guys, I've got the Chungers, then yeah, that is a good way to go. Not too good on solo, although invaded missions it does just fine as well. You weirdly have an easier time with the Chungers and the Doggos than you do just dealing with the little crappy ads running around that annoy you. So tomato really. Now everyone has their sort of favourite DPS setups, and I'm kind of hoping I've given enough examples for people to maybe branch out and maybe think about different things a little bit more. Now before I go though, because this is going to be quite a long video, god damn, what are we on now, 16 minutes 30, Jesus. I wanted to sort of just show some of my favourite DPS weapons, as well as some that have been mentioned by my clan as to like popular ones, and I kind of want to give like pros and cons to each one. So we're going to do sort of like top 5 ARs and then top 5 everything else, just because objectively speaking ARs do have higher DPS. Rifles have lower time to kill, so they do effectively more damage, but due to rapid fire rate, ARs do have among the higher DPS. Some SMGs will out DPS ARs. Problem is, ARs with that health damage really does sort of come in handy. So up first is the Black Market AKM. This is a controversial weapon. Its accuracy and stability is horrific, for lack of a better word. You will need to either play very close or have a very specific build to deal with the accuracy and stability. However, even with compromising to get a little bit more accuracy and stability, whether that be with your build or the mods or however you want to use it, the AKM has one of the lowest time to kills out of any weapon in the game, simply because it has 600 RPM and probably the highest base damage of any AR in the game. Once you start getting crits and then headshots on top of that, it beats most rifles. It even beats the M1A4QB in time to kill. Not by much, like 0.2 seconds, but it does beat it. It's honestly a monster. You just need to have a very specific build around how to use it, or just get really lucky with a few critical headshots. The CTAR 21. This is probably going to get a lot of hate, despite the fact that it is on the lower end of the damage scaling with most other ARs, being the fact that this weapon is pretty much a laser beam and has 900 RPM with very easy to control recoil. You do stand a very high chance of maintaining your headshots with this weapon. If not, use Rail Splitter and you're away even further. As such, due to that, where you're able to get more consistent headshots, the overall result will actually outperform most other ARs, including FAMAS. If you just sort of go as like an average ratio of headshot to headshot, the CTAR does hit consistently more and considerably more headshots, which therefore allows you to get a higher DPS output, which is kind of interesting. If you think about it, it does still though mean that you are, in order to get maximum potential out of it, you are limiting yourself to really focusing those headshots, where with something like the FAMAS, doesn't really matter too much either way. You're going to do some pretty epic DPS. With the CTAR, you really need those headshots for it to be up there. If you're not, then there's not too much point running it, because other ARs will do better. At number 3, we have the ACR or the ACRE. This is quite comparable to the MK16, where the MK16 does a little bit more damage but has a lower fire rate. The ACR does actually work out just a tiny bit more. However, where this weapon really excels is where it's actually got really high base damage with a pretty decent fire rate. Not as much as the AKM, but it's really stable. It's really accurate. So if you build it with a lot of multipliers, such as Fox's Prayer, Contractor's Gloves, Hollow Man Mask, maybe even 2-piece Walker Harris, and then add in, I don't know, for example, Glass Cannon. Due to the sheer amount of multipliers on top of it with the high base damage, the ACR honestly wrecks. It's more situational, like for example, when I showed my build off, I said it's more for legendary content or Black Tusk because it gets through the chungas and the doggos really quick and easy, absolutely destroys the mini tanks, and it does also work pretty well on a fair few bosses in the raid. So it's a lot more situational, but it is absolutely a brilliant weapon, and I would absolutely recommend people try it out. Yeah, it's on the list. I'm not a complete plebeian, some parts are missing. FAMAS, pretty much the gold standard of AR DPS. For some stupid reason, it has some seriously high base damage, especially for the RPM that it is at. For any weapon that is over 700 RPM, it has the highest base damage bar 1. So second highest base damage, and it also has for the ARs the highest RPM, coming in at 900. The only other weapon that shares 900 RPM with ARs is the CTAR, but the difference in their damage between the CTAR and the FAMAS is about 10k at base, which is ridiculous. Now honestly, the only thing I do not like about this weapon is 1, it's French, 2, it's got one hell of a kick, and I don't know why whenever I use it, just trying to do a control point, I always feel like I'm walking away with 1 bullet left. Like, I just feel like this thing burns ammo, and I can get the same result in the same amount of time with things like the ACR or the AKM, and just in case rogues do attack, I still have plenty of ammo left over. Where with the FAMAS, I've got like a magazine and a half, and I'm struggling for life. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just me because my accuracy is absolute potato, and due to the recoil of this weapon, but cannot deny the sheer DPS of this weapon. It is an absolute monster. It is, like I said, it's the gold standard, and it's a gold standard for a reason in this game. It is a beast. Anyway, gonna do some honourable mentions just because I'm sure there's going to be a few that I've missed that people are now going to be like, yo, well, where's this one? Well, first one is obviously going to be the Police M4. First issue of Police M4 is for its fire rate, it's actually got the lowest damage or lowest base damage going. It just has some seriously good fire rate. So once we start adding in multipliers, it actually really quickly falls off and becomes one of the lowest time to kill weapons in the game. Along with the fact that its recoil, it makes FAMAS's recoil look good. So, but if you like it, I suppose go for it. But yeah. Anyway, on to the numero uno, and if you know me, you know what's coming. Shield Splinterer. Yeah, boy, my boy Shieldy. Although this has a slightly tougher recoil, the accuracy of it is actually better. So as long as you're able to maintain that recoil, you're pretty much on point. Objectively as well, it is the highest DPS AR in the game. The only way in which FAMAS can keep up with this is if you're able to keep a 100% uptime on Killer. If you're running FAMAS, you typically run Killer, which you can't. Running Optimist on FAMAS puts it in the same predicament as Shield Splinterer, in which it is a ramp up. So the only way in which FAMAS beats Shield Splinterer is if you run killer and have a 100% uptime on it, which you can't guarantee. Because of that, per magazine, Shield Splinterer will do a massive 35,000 more damage per magazine. That's it. There's literally nothing in it. 35,000 more damage. That's it. It's like 35,058 damage more per magazine. Just because Perfect Optimist is always usable. This is also decreased slightly because Shield Splinterer only has 3 mod slots, whereas FAMAS has 4. So if you put a crit damage into the underbarrel one, you can decrease that to something like 7,000 damage per magazine. So again, there's literally nothing in it. I just like the way Shield Splinterer handles, and I prefer the look. Like a big, beefy, shiny boy. But yes, Shield Splinterer, for me, it's the way to go. Now, this video is absolutely dragging on, so I hope you'll now forgive what is going to become lazy editing as we go through my top 5 other DPS that aren't ARs. So, in at number 5, we have the Virginian. Now, you will be forgiven for thinking this is not really a DPS, more of a one-shot boom. But what I like about this weapon is with Perfect Boomerang, you can either have it as a one-shot headshot monster, or you can have it as a DPS. A lot of variety in the weapon, and it's quite solid to begin with. The custom L86, this is an LMG that acts like an AR, or it thinks it's an AR, because in real life it is an AR. This weapon is honestly stupid. Even with a FAMAS at 50 round magazine, custom L86 with a 30 round magazine does more DPS and has a lower time to kill. Why is this weapon not meta? Pestilence. Stats wise, just on its RPM and damage, this weapon is terrible. But it's that debuff. That debuff is a god, and you can do a stupidly obnoxious amount of damage with the Pestilence. The only problem is it does take time to build up, but once you've got it building up, especially on a good group of enemies, you can do some serious damage. Quick caveat, I've seen a lot of people going, oh, Pestilence with Strikers is OP. Strikers buff does not affect the Pestilence debuff, and considering on average 42% of Pestilence's damage comes from that debuff, don't run it with Strikers. Number 2 is the M1A series, the classic, the CQB and the SOCOM. CQB and the SOCOM are basically the exact same stat-wise, they just have a slight colour scheme difference. The classic is for your big boom shots. And then at number 1, we have the lightweight M4. For me, this is objectively the best rifle in the game. Highest DPS, lowest time to kill, unless you're doing the one-shot headshot with Virginian, in which case 1 bullet dead. So this is now closing on 30 minutes, and I did not mean it to be this damn long of a video, so I do apologise, and if you've stuck through all of this, thank you ever so much for watching. I hope this has been a little bit of an eye-opener on potentially trying different things, and maybe having a look at how DPS actually really works, and what kind of how you can build around different scenarios with different weapons and setups. But in the meantime, have fun, good luck, and don't die. It's bad for the health.